Hello everyone, welcome to this channel and welcome to this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Courtney. If you are new here, I am a first year EPIK teacher. I have been teaching for about 8 months in Korea now. I teach elementary school, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and I have taught at 5 different schools. And today I'm going to be telling you all about the interview questions as well as answers that I gave during the interview process. So if you haven't watched the last video, I talked all about just initial documents of submitting your application to EPIK all the way through into the end about the visa process. But this video, I wanted to really zero in on the interview specifically, giving you some tips and tricks that I think were really helpful, as well as the questions and the answers to those questions. So really what I'm wanting to do with this video is just inform you guys as much as possible, hopefully help you out with some answers to some questions that maybe you haven't thought of, but I do want to put the disclaimer that these are not perfect answers. You have to do what is authentic to you when you are talking about yourself in an interview. So these are just kind of some tips, so take it as you will. Like I said, they're not perfect, they just worked for me and helped me get this position, so I wanted to share it if it is helpful for you. Last thing before getting started, if you have made it this far into the application process with EPIK, you've been approved and you're going on to the interview, I just want to say congratulations. I know that it is a tough spot to be waiting for your interview and just be overthinking everything. I've been there, I understand, but I just want to say, take a deep breath. You've come this far. I'm very proud of you if nobody's told you that. All right, let's go ahead and start from the very top. Number one, interview setup. I touched on this in my last video, but when you do secure an interview with EPIK, you will be sent an email with a lot of different times and days that you can pick from. So EPIK allots those and you choose which one works for you. So for me, being in the UK at the time, though I'm a US citizen, I had around a 7 a.m., possibly 8 a.m. interview, but I know a lot of people in the States have a 12 o'clock or a 1 a.m. interview. So just be prepared for that. I personally set up the interview as soon as I possibly could because I knew that I wanted to hear a response back as soon as possible too. So extending it a week or two out was not something I wanted to do. And I really dug in and tried to do a lot of different interview questions and just preparation. And a lot of times that was YouTube videos like this. But as for the actual setup of the interview itself, make sure that your Zoom function is working because this is going to be an online interview because most likely you are not in Korea. You want to make sure that your Zoom function is working. It's always great to have a backup plan in case it doesn't work out. So maybe if it's on your computer but it crashes, then you have your phone. Try and have as many options as possible just in case. Also, what goes along with that is having a good environment. So having good lighting and also just not distracting noises. I woke up on the morning of my interview. I was living in a very small flat at the time, and all of a sudden construction workers decided to work on my apartment building. And so not only were there beeps and noises, but there were drills going, there was everything happening at once, and there was nothing I could do about it because I didn't know what was happening that morning, and you just can't stop construction work on your apartment. It was too early to be able to go to other places that were open, so it just was what it was. So if that happens to you, it's okay. My EPIK interviewer was very nice about that. But if you do have wireless earphones or AirPods or something like that, I do think that helps with the noise cancellation. So again, just making sure that everything that you can control is as ready as possible for that day, just to take that stress off your mind. Going along with that, you do want to dress professionally. So I remember I wore like a long sleeve blue turtleneck and you couldn't see the bottom, but I still dressed kind of professional with it because I didn't want to stand up mid-interview and just have on shorts and then a nice top. But I did try and dress like I would for any interview to, yes, take it seriously, but also show yourself, I guess, in your best light, because that is what you're trying to bring to the table with them. And then this last little tip is something that, I mean, you can give or take. This is just an idea. I'm not sure if this is necessarily true. I do not have any tattoos, but as an EPIK teacher, most of the time you're going to have to cover tattoos. So in the interview itself, I'm sure it probably doesn't matter if it's covered or not, most likely not. But if it was me, I think I would cover tattoos just to show that that is something you're able to do in the classroom, because that's something they'll ask you about, is if you're able to cover those tattoos. So I would just present yourself in that space how you would in the classroom actually doing your job. Again, that's just kind of a thought. Okay, now onto the actual interview tips. So number one, be enthusiastic. I think that this is really important to show I do want this job and I'm really passionate about it and I care and I want to do what it takes to make this happen. I think that's so important because anytime you're hiring someone for something, you have other options. They have plenty of people to pull from. So just showing your enthusiasm, showing how much this matters to you and you care is great. I don't want to have to go over the top to where it's fake at all, but really show your passion for this and how much you care. I think that'll go a long way. ways, because in the classroom, especially working with kids, your enthusiasm and letting that shine is really important, especially as an elementary school teacher. I think that just helps them get an idea for your personality in the classroom, like a level-headed but enthusiastic way. Number 2, smile. I've always gone with the philosophy that giving a smile to someone loses nothing. And I think especially if you go into an interview and your interviewer is not smiling at all, they're just giving you this very straight face, and it's a bit of a pain to be able to get through the interview. Thankfully, that was not my EPIK interview, but you know, that happens in certain jobs. I think it's just a positive thing walking into any interview, just showing that you are happy to be there and happy to talk with them. Number 3, this kind of goes along with number 1 of enthusiasm, but what I want to say here is conveying that you really want this job. So I would not be wishy-washy in your interview. Answering the question, you know, like, well, you know, I'm kind of between Korea and EPIK and the JET program in Japan, so I guess I'll just see. That's not an answer you want to give in an interview. So don't be wishy-washy, be very certain about where you want to go. So saying that you want this job is not necessarily getting on the interview and saying, hey, I really want this job. More so, it's just expressing, it's being able to show that and provide different examples. Just know that you are the person having to sell yourself in this job to be able to get it. This is not a shoe-in for anyone. There's lots of applicants. So really express to them this is your number 1 option. This is top tier for you, the top of your priority list. And so you want to make it the top of their priority list to then accept you. Number 4, show a genuine interest in Korea in all of your answers. Again, we're going to get into this in just a second, but just an overview, even in every single question, touching on why Korea. Number 5, don't stress too much. This interview, I believe they say it takes around 40 minutes. For me, it took anywhere between 20 and 25. It was actually very short, and the interview questions I found online actually added up pretty much all the way with the interview itself. So I was able to be as prepared as possible, but anytime you interview, it is going to be nerve-wracking. I completely understand that. But it's okay. Take a deep breath. You don't have to stress, much easier said than done, but if you can try and lower that anxiety just a little bit, then that would be great. Which leads me into my last point, number 6, it will be okay. Whether this interview goes good or it doesn't, you can always reapply for next year, and now you have the interview experience that you didn't previously had. I think every single interview you have, whether you get the job or not, it is a growth opportunity, and it hurts sometimes when you don't get the job, but when you do, it just shows you how to interview better and better for it next time and build experience with it. So whether it goes good, whether it goes bad, this is a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity. I know it can be hard to look at if it doesn't go your way, but just know it will be okay. You are making strides no matter which way this falls. And my last tip before leaving is just to say, play on your strengths. Nobody is going to get this job for you. You really have to sell it yourself. Now, when I say this, and I'm gonna say it constantly throughout the video, I don't mean be fake. I mean really latch onto those strengths. You don't have to blow this up into unrealistic proportions about what you bring to the table. Be honest about it, but again, you are the person who really has to show all the qualities that you're going to be able to provide for EPIK and be the best teacher that you can be. So you have to sell this really hard, and it's not selling anything fake. It's simply showing them who you are. And I think that's exactly what an employer wants. They're wanting to know what they're bringing in and how you're going to be able to act in their company and do the job that they're hiring you to do. So be confident. So question number 1, why do you want to teach English in Korea and with EPIK? This is going to be the most basic question that you are asked, and this is also going to be so dependent on your own backstory and your own situation of how you answer this. So for me, I pulled in my background of having different types of education, tried to show how my curvy roads still led to the same path of EPIK. So the way that I answer this question of why I want to teach English and teach English as a foreign language was to say that in my undergraduate degree of social work, I really enjoyed helping people, but I knew that what I really wanted to do and I desired to do was to teach. So I went and I got my master's degree in Scotland in English literature. Again, reinforced my love for education, both continually learning, but also being able to teach that to other people and just impart that information on them. I also loved living abroad in Scotland and all of the different experiences that that brought. So I wanted to combine those two special things of knowing that I love to teach, but also loving living abroad and learning more about cultures, and to be able to continually grow in that. And that is what I wanted to teach English as a foreign language, is to be able to combine those two paths. And why with EPIK specifically is because EPIK has a really incredible program of bringing in native speakers, and not just to teach something straight from the textbook, but instead to build conversational English that can be taken from the textbook, but also implemented in real life. So not only am I teaching this, and that's beneficial for me, but I also wanted to be able to impart that knowledge on my students so that they're more interconnected globally when they're older, which I think could benefit them tremendously and everybody else in this world. So that's my answer for it. Again, your experiences are going to vary, so I think this first question is just very out in the open for whatever your background lends itself to. The second question, this might differ if you have an undergraduate degree in education. I did not. So the second question, why are you going into education when your field of study was social work or your field of study was English literature for me? I kind of answered this in the previous question, but in this question specifically, I would be pulling on just the different things that I learned in social work itself, the importance of diversity, the importance of interpersonal communication, importance of going from micro to meso to macro communication, and just opening up relationships with people, cultural competency and how you're able to grow in that, and English literature, again, being able to break down a language so that it is understandable. You're taking something very complex, and in my case, a lot of research, but you're breaking it down until it's very, very tangible for people who don't know anything about the subject. And while that is a higher level of education than teaching elementary school, the concept remains the same, and that's what I loved about it. Those are the things I would pull together to be able to answer that question. Number 3, how would you deal with a hostile co-teacher? Another part of this question I've heard people get asked as well, what would you do if your co-teacher made a mistake in front of the classroom? Having some experience in EPIK now, I can say that that does happen. It doesn't always have to be hostile. I thankfully have not had that experience here. So the way that I would answer this question, I think then, but more so now, would be saying that you understand the co-teacher you're working with has years of experience, and they also have a degree in education, because in Korea they need a degree in education. You realize that they are more qualified and they do have expertise in this area. Being open in discussion with them is really important, knowing that you do add value, information in the specialty you have, which is English, to the field, but also they're the ones who have been teaching in the system a long time. So if that ever happened, I would talk to them after class. I would not bring this up in the middle of class with students. I would discuss it after and see if we could come to a happy medium, to be able to understand their side and also be able to communicate my needs of what is happening as well, to see if we can come to a common ground. That's just how I would answer that question. Again, maybe that's pulling more so from knowledge now, and I could have answered differently at the time. I'm not quite sure. So take that as you will, but that is how I would handle the situations now. Number 4, what does EPIK stand for? This will definitely be asked of you, and you should know it, but even I know I was stressed before the interview. It was like, English program in Korea, English program in Korea. EPIK, English program in Korea. It's pretty straightforward, and it's a catchy acronym. Number 5, what is the structure of the Korean education system? This is something I didn't know a lot about before going into EPIK. I'm actually not sure if I had this as an interview question personally. I would do your research on this as much as possible. The information I can give you now on this would be to say that in Korea, the elementary school system works from 1st through 6th grade, so 6 years. The middle school system is 3 years, but it is 7th, 8th, 9th, in American terms, but in Korea, it's called 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade of middle school. And then lastly, high school is 3 years after that, which would be our 10th, 11th, and 12th. So 6 years, 3 years, 3 years. I think just knowing the vague layout of the education system in Korea, also understanding that you are going to be teaching in public schools as a EPIK teacher, but there are hagwons. Hagwons are academies here. They're not private schools. They're just after school classes, but a lot of people, a lot of students will go to English hagwons. But if you go to English or math hagwon, then what you're really doing is you're studying a lot, and a lot of those kids are going to have a much higher level of English. So depending on where you're at, especially geographically where you're living, you might have a very vast difference between higher level and lower level students when it comes to English, having to do with access to hagwons. But again, that's neither here nor there. It's just something good to know in case that's something that you want to pull from. But I think just having a vague outline and understanding of what you're walking into as a teacher, being able to explain that a little bit is helpful. Number 6, what potential cultural differences do you see yourself potentially facing? How would you deal with those experiences and those differences? So going back to the beginning of the video where I said really pull on your strengths, something that was a strength of mine that I thought I could bring to the table was that I didn't have a background in education itself, but what I did have was a lot of travel under my belt, which I'm really blessed I was able to have before going into this. So for a lot of the interview, what I was pulling on was being able to travel to those different countries, talking about the countries themselves, but also learning the history, understanding before going that it was important to know everything from the currency to transportation, how to get around, how the government worked, because all of those things are important before visiting countries. And sometimes I think if you're traveling around North America or if you're going to Europe, that doesn't seem as important, but the more places you travel, you really do have to have a certain amount of understanding and again, cultural competency to be able to walk into these situations and making sure that you can handle yourselves within those countries. So for me, when I talked about cultural differences, what I pulled on very, very strongly was language itself. And I think when it comes to dealing with those differences, like I said, it would just be pulling from educating yourself and understanding what is happening before you walk into a situation as much as possible. Also though, having an openness and a flexibility of learning those things at the time too. When it comes to language, I think being as prepared as possible, trying to learn the language as best you can and communicating that in the interview. And I'm gonna be honest, my Korean is not that fantastic, as in I know how to speak very, very basic Korean, but you know, we're all still learning. But I think acknowledging that that could potentially be a problem and saying that I'm learning Hangul currently or I'm learning Korean, identifying that as maybe a weakness, but also something that you found a way to be able to overcome and grow in before actually going to Korea. When it comes to how to deal with those differences, I think also noting that you have a really strong support system back home can be great, because something that I found that the interviewer seemed to be hinting at a little bit was if you are homesick, how are you going to be able to make it living in this new country? And for me, saying I've already lived abroad in a different country, and though it was difficult and though you get homesick at times, you have to remember why you're there. And you really have to pour yourself into making connections with people also in this country. So in this case, going to Korea, making sure that you develop those connections and those relationships both in the school but also outside of the school, and showing that you're not just there to be a teacher, you're also there to live and to experience this different country and to have this real exchange opportunity. So you're open and you're willing to meet people. Number 7, why do you think that you would be a good fit for the EPIK program? Once again, this is not the time to pull yourself back. Oh, maybe this could be good. Maybe I'm all right at this. No, you are, girl. You are good at this, or guy. You just have to really sell that. Again, not selling anything fake, but really just showing exactly why you are the right fit for this job. So maybe talking about how, yes, you have a passion for teaching, but more than that, you also really love communicating with kids. You're very creative in how you think and how you can address things, showing that living abroad is something that's exciting for you. It is daunting in its own respect, but it's something that you've maybe always wanted to do, that also you find the value in it, that this isn't just any job that you've applied for. This is one that has meaning for you. This is one that builds bridges between nations, helps people become more interconnected, helps students be able to gain knowledge in a language that they can go out into the world later on and you made a difference. So why am I a good fit for EPIK? Because I truly believe in what EPIK stands for, being an English program in Korea, its goals and the vision behind EPIK, having a cultural exchange between students and teachers, of understanding the value that EPIK brings to Korea, but also other native English speakers. I just really believe in the vision itself, and I want to be a part of that deeply. That is what I would communicate to EPIK. Just really showing what value you will add to the EPIK team that they don't already have. Obviously though, there's a lot of different things you can say for that answer that's coming from more of a passion perspective. You could also be listing things about how you are really good at classroom management and how you think you would thrive because you know multiple different languages and that it's easy for you to be able to communicate and talk with students. Maybe you're really creative and you thrive in a classroom. You can talk about all these different things and list the practical examples as well as the passion. You know, you don't want to get lost in that. You want to be able to back up with examples everything that you're saying. And number 8, what is your 5-year plan? Or really, what does your future look like? What do you see your future looking like? I'm not sure if my interviewer specifically asked about a 5-year plan, but I think she was really wanting to know, what do you see your future being like? Because maybe you'll recontract. Maybe this isn't just a 1-year thing. Every single year with EPIK, you do need to recontract. But for me, I kind of took this as what do we see longevity-wise with you in the future, potentially retaining you? I was just honest. I said that I saw myself doing education and doing something that I was passionate about, and that is teaching kids right now. And that is something I really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to that growth, and I just see myself going in that direction as much as I possibly can for the future. Also mentioning that I do love living abroad, and I would love to continue to do that, showing that I'm willing to do this possibly for more than just a year. This is number 9. You may or may not get asked this question, but how would you handle disruptive students? The way I answered this question is just to say that every single student is coming from a different place. So I would just come and address them with compassion and as much understanding as possible, answering them in a very even temperament, to not rise to the occasion with emotions, but instead level them out. I also personally would redirect students away from what is happening. So whether that be a fight in the classroom, or sometimes students can get really upset because they're not good at English and they don't understand any of what you're talking about, and that can get really frustrating for them. So just being able to redirect attention from whatever that bothersome element is. If that's a student, then switching seats. But also alongside that, saying that at the beginning of the semester, the beginning of the year, you as a teacher also set very clear rules around classroom management and how you would handle it accordingly with that as well, showing that there's fair treatment for each and every single person in the classroom, and that you are simply handling it as you said that you would. This is not a surprise to them. The expectations were already set. Clear, calm, level-headed, compassionate, but also being able to follow through on what you said at the beginning of the year. And the last one, what difficulties do you see yourself facing in Korea? This is one that I also touched on briefly before. I think it was just structured a little bit different, but my advice for answering this question is just to say, it's like when you're asked a question in any interview that is asking about your weakness, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I can't actually out myself on my really bad weakness. What I actually want to do is talk about something I'm good at, but morph it into something that could be seen as possibly a bad quality. But, you know, saying that sometimes you want to work on your flexibility, because as a teacher, you are very organized and you want to work alongside your schedule to make sure that you are on pace. But knowing that now you do want to be able to gain that flexibility, to understand that there is a language difference now, and just be able to talk about things like that, I think is always helpful. Listing something that could be a difficulty, it is a difficulty, but also how you're going to be able to successfully navigate that. I wouldn't leave it hanging as, you know, I'm just really bad with time management. That's probably not going to be the way you want to leave things. So what you list, be honest about it, but also be able to have something to follow through and not necessarily fix it with, but show how you're going to improve on it. So those are all the interview questions and the tips, tricks, and advice that I would give. I hope that this video was helpful for you. If it is, definitely make sure and give it a thumbs up. I would love to know what type of content you guys would like next. I'm thinking about doing one on the personal essays for the EPIK application, but let me know if you enjoy this type of content. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this was very helpful for you if you are going through this process yourself. Good luck if you are. Once again, deep breath. I believe in you. You can do it. I hope you have the absolute best day of your life, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!